The final straw didn't come with fireworks. It came with an invoice for $0.00. A client emailed us confused, saying, "Is this some kind of promotion?" It wasn't. It was just the first ripple in the unraveling. But that's not where it started. It started 3 hours earlier when I was in the office, alone, again, hand-feeding our payment processor through another overnight cycle. I'd already fixed a misfired webhook, compiled a deprecated analytics module, and manually pushed through a security compliance report. Our CTO had promised the board would be automated by Q2. It was Q4. I'd done it by hand for the past 3 years. My name's Julia, and I've been the silent spine of this company since before it had Windows. Not Windows trademark, literal Windows. Used to run the server on a fold-out table next to the mini-fridge in a shared coworking space that smelled like cold pizza and venture capital. Back then, I was a lifesaver. Indispensable, a magician. These days, I'm ops, lowercase, no flair. Just the lady they loop in when a contract's been signed, but nobody knows how the hell to fulfill it. 10 years of spreadsheets, licenses, compliance frameworks, crisis triage. Not once did I let a fire spread past my desk. That's not ego talking, it's muscle memory. I don't do chaos, I preempt it. While the C-suite gave TEDx talks and built their Twitter followings on scaling culture, I scaled the goddamn infrastructure. Alone. If you're still reading this and already feeling a bit angry for me, do me a small favor. I just started this channel. Hit subscribe and help me hit my first 10,000 subscribers. It's free. It tells the algorithm I'm not as invisible as they thought. Back to it. The truth is, I knew exactly when they stopped seeing me. It was subtle at first. A thanks turning into a thumbs up. The monthly report reviews shifting to glossy dashboards no one asked me to review. Then came the reorgs. I kept getting mapped further and further from any org chart that actually had decision-making authority. My new boss, 29-year-old whose resume included personal branding consultant and ran a failed NFT marketplace. Once, during a vendor onboarding, he actually turned to me and said, "Can you send the thing?" I said, "Which thing?" He just blinked. "The setup thing," like I was Alexa and he forgot the command. I sent it, I always do. He took credit for the integration, of course. That was the rhythm now. The interns came to me when they needed real answers. Execs looped me in when things went sideways. Never when they went well. And the infrastructure? Oh, the infrastructure. They thought the billing ran itself, that the license renewal pings were cloud magic, that our filings auto-synced with no human finger hovering over the kill switch every fiscal deadline. I was that kill switch. None of it was documented properly. Not because I didn't try, but because no one cared to read it. Every time I sent a memo, I'd get too long. Read from the same people who wrote 20-slide decks on mission-driven vertical synergy. They didn't want clarity. They wanted plausible deniability. Still, I stayed, because I had built this thing from code and caffeine. Because I didn't need applause, I needed stability. I didn't want to start over. I didn't want to retrain under a new bro with a MacBook and a startup hoodie who thought SOC2 was a music genre. Something shifted after last year's holiday party. They announced bonuses over champagne. My name wasn't mentioned. I didn't even get the catered meal. I was running the EOY compliance exports that night. Later, I found out the junior product manager, who once asked me what net revenue meant, got a $12K bonus and a Peloton. When I asked about mine, HR said, "We're evaluating core contributors under new criteria." New criteria. I started counting the silent betrayals after that. The projects that suddenly didn't include me. The metrics I built getting rebranded under someone else's initials. And the latest, an intern looping me in to explain a process I invented because he heard it used to run differently before we standardized. Standardized, my scripts, my systems, my decades of paranoia disguised as preparedness. And they were rebranding it like IKEA furniture. So I waited, calmly. Professionally, I stopped offering reminders. I stopped preemptively fixing things. I let the memory decay begin slowly like rot under a paint job. And one sleepless night at 1:58 a.m., my phone buzzed. A single text from HR. "Your role's been made redundant. Thank you for your service. IT will revoke access at 8. No call, no meeting, no offer." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then I opened my laptop. One last time. There's a certain flavor of humiliation that only comes at 2 a.m. The kind that doesn't shout, it just taps you on the shoulder and whispers you were never real to them. I read the message twice. Then a third time, "Your role's been made redundant. Thank you for your service. IT will revoke access at 8. No name, no signature, no warning. A message with all the warmth of a parking ticket. And not even from my manager, just HR ops. Like I was some underperforming printer in the mailroom they finally got around to replacing. I didn't scream, didn't cry. Just sat there, bathed in the pale light of my monitor and the familiar scent of burned-out lavender from the candle I'd forgotten to blow out. Redundant. They hadn't even bothered to fire me properly. No offboarding meeting. No transition plan. No knowledge transfer. Just a digital guillotine set to drop at 0800 sharp. I felt weightless, like the part of me that gave a damn finally evacuated the building. I reached for my coffee, lukewarm now, half empty, and opened my laptop. Not to save anything, not to do anything, just to see. No dramatic file deletions. No pulling cables or triggering scripts like in some cyber thriller. Just a quiet audit. I clicked through the dashboards, the integrations, the calendars I once hand-fed into existence. Billing cron jobs still queued. The API keys that had quietly expired 3 days ago, waiting for someone to notice. They hadn't. I hovered over my own access panel, still full admin, still invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. And no, I didn't back up anything. Didn't download client files or reroute access. I didn't need to. I was the backup. The best kind of revenge. The kind that's already built into the system. Kind that looks like nothing until it's too late to stop. I opened the ops dashboard. My heartbeat didn't even flinch. A single blink and I saw the alerts stacking quietly. License checks overdue, contract renewals missing signatures, two-factor tokens that hadn't been refreshed since last quarter. Like cracks spidering across glass under fresh weight. And I knew something no one else did. The weight was about to get a hell of a lot heavier. Open the filing pipeline. Quarterly reports due to regulators in 48 hours. The sync batch was paused. I'd paused it last week to fix a checksum bug. Never resumed it, never got asked. No notes, no follow-up, no one noticed. I clicked over to the client escalation inbox. 11 emails flagged urgent, all unread. I used to triage that inbox daily, silently resolving what the relationship managers didn't know existed. They never asked how, just called me a rock star in passing, and assumed it would always just get done. Funny thing about rocks, they don't float. At 3:07 a.m., I closed every tab, one by one. No drama, no mic drop. The last window I touched was the company-wide Slack. There was a message from the CEO in #General, sent 2 hours earlier. Tough decisions today, but we're evolving. Resilience is our competitive advantage. Underneath, 37 clapping emojis. I stared at that sentence like it was a foreign language. Resilience. They gutted the one department that actually kept the lights on and had the audacity to call it evolution. I logged out, not rage quitting, not storming out, just stepping away. At 4:15 a.m., I powered down my laptop for the last time. My reflection hovered for a second in the black screen. Tired, not broken. I didn't steal a damn thing, didn't sabotage a single system, simply stopped holding the ceiling up. And by 8:01 a.m., when they finally revoked my access, it had already begun. At 8:42 a.m., the CFO was already yelling into a muted Zoom window, his forehead glossy with panic sweat. He hadn't shaved. His usual Patagonia vest was missing, just a wrinkled dress shirt and eyes that screamed what the hell is happening. By 9:00 a.m., 3 payment escalations had hit his inbox. Not delayed, not declined, vanished. Whole invoices failed to register in the system. Clients were confused. One wrote, "Do we owe you money or not?" Another had already suspended their auto-renewal, assuming we'd closed shop. Meanwhile, the revenue ops channel in Slack was a bonfire. Screenshots of errors, pings with it here and at channel flying like confetti at a sad corporate funeral. A junior associate asked, "Did something update overnight?" Another suggested restarting the billing server. There was no billing server. It was a cluster of lambdas I'd hand-scripted over 3 years, and no one else could spell, let alone manage. At 9:18 a.m., the head of IT made a public post about unexpected systems latency. Someone else blamed AWS. Then a dev asked, "Did we do any releases last night?" The Git history was clean. Git doesn't log neglect. By 9:40 a.m., found the first real clue. My name on a renewal script that hadn't run. That's when the messages started flooding into my personal inbox, emails, texts, LinkedIn pings I hadn't opened in years. "Hey Julia, quick question. Could you hop on a call? Just 5 minutes. We're trying to locate some documentation. Might have been in your folder." The desperation bled through the polite corporate phrasing like cheap perfume over a rotting carcass. Weren't asking where I went. They were asking what I took. Answer, nothing. I hadn't downloaded a single file, hadn't scrubbed a drive or triggered a silent nuke. I had simply stopped doing what I'd always done. No one ever thought to copy my personal Confluence space. Most of it was marked private, not out of spite, out of habit. They told me once during a reorg that visibility is a bottleneck, so I stopped sharing things unless asked. They stopped asking. Now the skeletons were swinging in the breeze. HR didn't have my offboarding checklist because no one made one. My redundant role had no redundancy, no transition doc, no password vault access transfer, no licensing credentials. I hadn't withheld it, they just didn't know they needed it. Cold satisfaction bloomed in my chest like smoke curling from a match head. But beneath it, something else stirred, an ache, dull and low. I didn't want this. I'd warned them. For coffee breaks, in status updates, buried in emails titled Risk, Centralized Access. They laughed, said I was paranoid, said I should empower the team more, said you'll burn out if you don't delegate. I tried, I really did. But every time I pulled back, something broke. And they came running, not to learn, not to help, but to dump the pieces in my lap. At 10:12 a.m., the head of legal pinged IT in all caps. We need the Q2 filings. Where is the access? No one answered. The filings were still queued in a batch job I paused 8 days ago after noticing an export bug. I'd flagged it, tagged 3 people, even suggested a patch. No one responded. At 10:37 a.m., the VP of Client Experience called me, twice, then texted, "Hey Julia, sorry about everything, no hard feelings. Just wondering, do you remember where the contract template's live? Having some issues." That sorry hit like a cold slap. No name, no apology, just corporate damage control. No hard feelings. You buried me with a line of HR boilerplate in the dead of night and thought I'd leave you a map. At 10:52 a.m., I opened that text, didn't reply. Just stared at the typing indicator that came and went. A long pause, then another message. Hope we can still be friends. Friends, the gall. By 11 o'clock a.m., we're in full triage mode. The finance team was trying to piece together what had or hadn't been billed. Someone pulled a 6-month-old Excel file and tried to rebuild a ledger manually. Another exec found a Notion page last edited in 2022 and cried victory, only to realize it was a deprecated flow I abandoned when we switched vendors. And still, no one had realized the worst part. I hadn't done anything to them. I just wasn't there anymore. By noon, it wasn't a fire anymore. It was a full-blown inferno. The kind of corporate disaster that doesn't come from malice or hackers, but from pure, baked-in arrogance. It started with a well-meaning junior exec named Chad. Of course it was Chad. Bright-eyed, loud-voiced, 6 months in, with an MBA from somewhere coastal, and a vocabulary made entirely of buzzwords. Chad had been looped into the crisis via a frantic email thread titled Blocker. Q2 client escalations. His solution? Just send the compliance package manually. Should be easy. So Chad, bless his red, bull-fueled optimism, found one of my old training PDFs from 2021 and followed the steps exactly. What he didn't know was that the vendor forms had changed last fall. The formatting rules, field validation, signature, timestamp alignment, all updated in an email he never read from a listserv he wasn't even subscribed to. He uploaded the wrong version, to the wrong portal, using an expired digital cert. That triggered an automatic rejection, which flagged our company in the regulatory backend, which immediately hit the public database, which 3 of our largest healthcare clients actively monitor for compliance status. By 12:17 p.m., one of them issued a formal pause on engagement, citing material breach of compliance reporting terms. In English, they froze a $22 million contract and pulled all live access. Just like that, it was almost impressive. 10 years of bulletproof filings, wiped out by one PowerPoint cowboy with too much confidence and zero context. And the best part, no one blamed Chad. Not really. They blamed the lack of internal process clarity. One VP even wrote in Slack, "This highlights our need for stronger documentation hygiene." Hygiene, like I was the dirty one. Like I hadn't spent a decade scrubbing their mess with my bare hands while they sniffed their own LinkedIn praise. I sat at my kitchen table, watching it all in real-time, muted Zoom clips forwarded to me by a friend still on the inside. You could see it in their eyes, confusion masquerading as leadership. The COO kept saying, "Just need to stabilize," like the building wasn't already halfway underwater. They were trying to fix rot with duct tape. Because here's what no one had realized until now. There was no team behind the ops engine. No black box. No hidden bench of engineers. It was me. I was the automation. Client billing, routed through scripts I built in Zapier, then hand-stitched into our archaic ERP via custom middleware they refused to update. Licensing renewals, synced with a compliance calendar I wrote in a personal Google Sheet because the paid solution they chose didn't support time zone logic, and no one ever circled back to fix it. Regulatory templates. I rewrote those annually after reading 600-page PDFs while everyone else was at the retreat in Aspen. No one asked me to delegate. No one assigned me a backup. They just assumed the machine would keep running. Because it always had. Because I never let it stop. And now they were watching the gears grind in real time, asking why the engine was seizing. One particularly ironic moment hit around 12:35 p.m. A director frantically asked in the Slack thread, "Who owns the API key vault?" Silence. Then someone said, "Wasn't that Julia?" Someone else, "Did she document that?" Then a third, "I think she said she would, eventually." I did, in a personal Notion file, on my laptop, when I shut down 8 hours ago. And yet I didn't smile, didn't fist pump. There was no champagne in my fridge, no gotcha tweet drafted in my notes app. Just me in yesterday's hoodie, staring out the window at a world that kept moving. Vindicated? Absolutely. But haunted? Yeah, that too, because I didn't want this. I warned them not once, not subtly, over coffee. In retro-s, emails with subject lines like SPOF concerns, automation ownership and risk, regulatory dependence on single admin. They never read them, or they read them and nodded and moved on. Assumed I'd always catch the slack, that I'd stay late, that I'd care more than they did, that I'd never, ever let it fall. But I wasn't there anymore. And the walls, they were coming down fast. At exactly 12:58 p.m., CFO stopped speaking mid-sentence during a standing budget review, stared at his screen, and said the quiet part out loud. "Where the hell is the money?" The intern who overheard it said his tone was half confused, half vomity. Because it wasn't a rounding error or a delay in wire processing. It was a void. $95 million in annual renewals that hadn't posted, processed, or even touched the invoicing system. Not late, not rejected, just gone. That was when the real bloodletting started. The temporary renewal system, that's what I'd called it 2 years ago. The one I stitched together over a sleepless Thanksgiving weekend after the CTO's pet platform migration failed to port recurring billing logic. I built a stopgap in 72 hours using conditional logic, legacy contract data, and 3 different tools that weren't designed to talk to each other. I told them, in plain terms, this is brittle. It's held together by chewing gum and my hatred of cascading failure. I said we needed budget to rebuild it right. They said, well, it's working now, right? And because I didn't want the clients to suffer, I kept patching it. Quietly, relentlessly. Until last night when I powered down my laptop and stopped being their human duct tape dispenser. So now, the renewals that were supposed to hit the books this week, never generated, never issued, never existed. Counting tried to manually reconstruct the flow. But without the cross-referenced metadata, contract flags, and the client tier mapping I stored in a private Airtable, the one they said was unnecessary complexity, they were flying blind. At least 3 key clients thought they had canceled. One emailed in all caps, "Is this your way of terminating US?" That was just the warm-up. At 1:20 p.m., federal auditor who'd been scheduled to receive quarterly financials by noon Eastern Time had officially flagged us for noncompliance. The auto-confirmation ping never came. Because the export package, the one I manually validated every single quarter, was never sent. No signature, no attachment, just a missing deadline. You know what happens when a federally audited fintech company misses a reporting window? Stock freeze. Client panic. Media silence. Legal teams skipping lunch. Speaking of lunch, I made a sandwich, nothing fancy, sourdough, turkey, some mustard I'd been saving for a weekend that never came. I sat on my balcony in the sunlight, phone face down, a glass of cold water sweating onto the table next to me. I ate slowly. For the first time in years, no Slack pings, no quick questions, no passive-aggressive calendar invites for meetings with no agenda. Just peace, the distant sound of corporate Rome burning. My phone buzzed once, twice, 10 times. Unknown numbers, voicemails from blocked IDs. A WhatsApp message from a number I didn't recognize, "Please, We just need 5 minutes. Help us fix this. I didn't respond. I knew what they were feeling. That awful drop in your stomach when you realize the parachute doesn't open because you never bothered to check if one was packed. The panic, the circular finger pointing, hollow realization that the adult in the room had left and took nothing but their silence with them. Somewhere in a conference room full of panicked executives and overpriced ergonomic chairs, someone finally uttered the forbidden sentence. Wait, did anyone even know how this worked? No, they didn't. But I did, and I was no longer on call. They used to laugh when I brought up the bus factor. You know, the old engineering term. How many people would have to get hit by a bus before a project collapses? I wasn't even dramatic about it. I didn't say if I die, I said if I get the flu. If I go off the grid. If I finally burn out and stop fixing your fire drills at 1 a.m. while eating string cheese for dinner. But every time I said it, every time I sent an email with bullet points and action items and polite suggestions to cross-train someone, anyone, they waved me off. Julia, worry too much. Let's not over-engineer the process. Let's focus on impact, not paranoia. Impact, yeah, now they were living the impact. Front row seat, no refunds. I had a whole folder titled Bus Factor Mitigation Julia on the shared drive. Last updated 14 months ago. No one ever opened it. I know because I monitored the view history. Not one click. And now, that same HR director, the one who sent me that sterile, spineless 2 a.m. text, was frantically trying to locate it. My friend inside said she was white as drywall during the emergency legal review. Apparently, someone from the audit committee asked, was there any formal offboarding procedure for Julia? She said yes. Then they asked for documentation. Her face fell like a Jenga tower on tilt, because there wasn't any, not even a checklist. No NDA update. No knowledge transfer session. Not even a thank you Zoom. And here's the kicker. They told the board my role was non-critical and that redundancy measures were in place. Both lies, both traceable, both legally problematic. The audit team smelled blood, and while they flailed, I was already 2 steps ahead. At 2:12 p.m., I got a message from Claire, a former colleague, now VP of operations at a rival firm. She'd seen the headlines. The compliance breach, the investor call with no transcript, speculation that the fintech darling was quietly unraveling. Hey, are you okay? I told her I was fine, better than fine. Then came the real message. Would you consider coming on board as a consultant? We've got legacy systems to fix. And I'd love to finally see your name on something. It hit different. No fluff. No tap dancing around titles. No let's circle back. Just respect. Recognition. A chance to build something without needing to be invisible to keep it alive. Didn't say yes. Not right away. I told her I'd think about it. But inside, I'd already decided. Because for the first time in a decade, I wasn't crawling to anyone. I wasn't asking for a seat at the table. I was the table. And now they knew it. I took a walk after that. Past the coffee shop where I used to doom scroll Slack during lunch. Past the office building with the frosted glass meeting rooms where I'd silently fix crises while executives made vision boards. I saw one of them, actually Jeff, the chief innovation strategist, standing outside on his phone, pacing, red-faced, sweating through his blazer. He didn't see me. Funny how that works. They never saw me when I was holding everything up. But they're sure as hell noticing the hole I left behind. That's not revenge. That's gravity. By Friday morning, the cracks weren't cracks anymore. They were chasms. And in the middle of all that silence, the emails started to arrive. Not from recruiters or LinkedIn randos. Clients. Real ones. People I'd onboarded back when our contracts were still PDFs and e-signatures were a luxury. The kind of clients who never cared about our rebrands or executive reshuffles. They just knew that every time something went sideways, one person got it done. And now that person was gone. The subject lines were disarmingly human. Are you okay? Just heard what happened. Where did you go? Didn't reach out, didn't solicit, didn't even update my job status. I just replied, short, honest, clean. I'm no longer with the company, it was their decision. Hope everything's well on your end, that's all it took. 10 minutes later, another one. We've been trying to get support for a week. Nobody answers. Honestly, we're nervous. I didn't offer solutions. I didn't sell them anything. I just answered the questions they already had. Where's our quarterly report? Are our license seats fluctuating? Did someone switch our billing contact without notice? I told the truth, and the truth spoke volumes. By noon, 3 separate clients, each with contracts north of $10 million, had independently reached out to Claire, the VP at the rival firm. No NDA, no slide decks. No sales pitches. Just one line, repeated again and again. We heard Julia's there now. My name, not the company, not the product. One of them even said it on a recorded call. Frankly, we're staying with whoever has Julia. That's who we trust. I watched that clip twice, once in disbelief, once in something heavier, something sharp and quiet and dangerously close to pride. Because for years, I was background noise, a nameless fix-it button. Someone who made things happen but never got a byline, who was told not to center herself during Team Retro S, was always asked to be a little smaller, a little quieter, a little less. Now I was the damn guarantee. The headlines hadn't come out yet, but insiders were already whispering. Investors were asking questions. Clients were slipping away without warning, and there was nothing my old company could do to stop it, not because I sabotaged them, but because I was no longer there to hold them up. I didn't spike the contract pipeline. I was the pipeline. And when I left, didn't break, it evaporated. Still, I didn't gloat, didn't screenshot the emails, didn't forward the praise. I sat with it in silence, like a candle burning low in the back of an empty church. This wasn't revenge. This was the consequence of 10 years of being the invisible gravity that held their world together. And now that I was gone, everything they thought would orbit forever was floating into space. Postmortem read like a corporate autopsy performed by blindfolded surgeons. 3 weeks after my departure, the internal report finally dropped. 38 pages of jargon-drenched denial wrapped around a single unavoidable truth. No breach, no sabotage, no theft. Just good old-fashioned, fully organic incompetence. The findings were exquisite. Primary failure points appear to stem from undocumented dependencies and lack of knowledge redundancy. Translation: nobody knew how anything worked because I never got to train anyone, because nobody cared until I was already gone. They'd spun it every way possible. The CTO claimed there was a procedural oversight. The COO blamed scaling pains. The HR director, she'd taken emergency family leave, funny timing. But the cherry on top came from the CEO himself. A LinkedIn post, equal parts smarm and spin. We recently experienced a disruption due to unexpected system limitations. We're taking steps to future-proof our infrastructure and rebuild trust. Innovation requires risks, and we learn from each one. No apology, no ownership. Just a half smile in a blazer blaming the ghost of tech infrastructure past. But investors weren't buying the fairy tale. By Monday, 3 major publications had run headlines with phrases like operational negligence and compliance collapse. The company's stock took a 19% dip by Wednesday. Their biggest partner issued a statement reevaluating strategic alignment. The board called an emergency restructuring meeting. 2 VPs were retired early. And through it all, my phone stayed mercifully quiet. No begging, no blame, just the hollow echo of realization settling in. Because you can't file a lawsuit against gravity. You can't fire someone again for choosing silence over martyrdom. What I built wasn't revenge. It wasn't a Trojan horse or a final keystroke with a poison payload. It was just necessary. And when the necessity walked out, so did their stability. That Friday, I took the subway to my new office. A modest space, clean and sunlit. The kind of building that smells like fresh paint and glass cleaner, not burnt coffee and stress sweat. Claire met me in the lobby, smiling, holding 2 coffees and a folder thick with onboarding docs she'd already color-coded just in case you like organizing things your own way. She knew. Upstairs, I passed the open bullpen, nodding at the engineers and analysts who already knew my name, not because I saved them from disaster, but because they'd read my memo before the fire. Then I reached my door. My name was etched in frosted glass, centered, clear, not too big, but impossible to miss. Julia Reynolds, Director of Strategic Operations. I stood there for a second, one hand on the knob, letting it all settle. No Slack pings, no passive-aggressive CCs, no late-night quick asks, just silence and control. And then, quietly, almost reverently, I opened my laptop, checked the headlines one last time, and shut the lid with a click that felt like punctuation. They called me redundant, but they finally understood. I was the load-bearing wall. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.